Hello again, everybody. This is Wade Wacker with Reasons for Hope, and this is Money in the Bible, and we are going to tell it like it is. For those of you that watched last week's show, please, nobody guessed who the announcer was that was used for last week, so please guess this week announcer that was used in the beginning here. All right, this week's show is going to be on the Antichrist, the government, and the virus. Now, I will be giving some opinions in this talk, so please understand that they're my opinions based on what I believe. Everybody has a right to their opinions. Unfortunately, this situation with the virus has created a huge device into many people and the arguments that they have, and it's gotten really tough with the protests going on, etc. As far as where people stand. Unfortunately, hate and anger has come into play, and I'll discuss that here in the talk. One thing I want to mention before we get started is our new Debunked came out, or Debunked 15 came out yesterday. Debunked 15, and it's evolution is a fact. We're going to debunk evolution is a fact, and in my opinion, it is the best one yet. It is really good. The Bub and Carl and the team are to be congratulated on the collaboration that they had with scientists, and so much is a very, very in-depth debunked, and we put a lot into it for the 2.5-3 minute video. It is really good. I urge you to watch it. It's on this YouTube channel here. I just urge everybody to go ahead and watch that. Okay, let's get started. If many of you were like me when you read Revelations, it was tough for the longest time to really come into a context of how the Antichrist would all of a sudden become global. Because in Revelations, as we will read in the verse, it shows that it will be a one world global economy, and he will have authority over all. And so you were like, oh man, that just doesn't seem how that could be. Yeah, you could see how it could be regionally when you had the European Union start. You could kind of see how that worked out, etc. But as far as a global, it really was tough to see. But oh my, over the last 45 to 50 days, if things changed with your opinion and how those words actually could easily come to fruition. The way I thought it was originally the easiest way for the Antichrist was financial. I thought that at some point in time, the global economy would come into play, and it would be so much more efficient if we created a one world economy, because we're doing so much trade between countries now. And I just thought the savings that could happen with the one world currency / economy, I could see that being a way that the Antichrist could work themselves into being able to help poverty in so many situations and to help people increase their standard of living. And the way I thought it was going to come into play, obviously, was with the mark of the beast, as it talks about in relation to in Revelation, in relation to how it would work, and how in my mind it would work would become in the form of taxes. Our tax system currently right now is the most inefficient means to do this possible, especially in today's world with technology. Our tax system was built with paper back in the 50s, and predominantly it has not changed. And the complexity of the system is so archaic. You could give a situation where a person has multiple businesses, does multiple things, and if you handed that tax return to 20 different people, you get 20 different answers. And those are incredibly smart people who do taxes for a living. It's just our system is archaic, and that's just the income taxes, let alone the payroll taxes, the unemployment taxes, this tax, the stadium tax, ba 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 ba. You get tax after tax after tax. In fact, in our ministry, we have to find the tax spreadsheets in some situations from the federal, state, city, county, and stadium levels. It's almost impossible to do it correctly. So the ease of how this system would work is if you could create an efficient system, a la have something that every time that you came into a store and bought something, that you would instantly pay tax on every purchase. It's the fairest way to do a tax system. The more you buy, the more you pay tax. And the reason why you need to keep track of it is because you need to have a standard level that if you only have this much, or you're at this much certain of an income level, that you would have credits to offset that. So you'd have to keep track, and how easy it would be to keep track of it with a system like that. So the first way that I thought the Antichrist would come into play would be the economy. But oh my. Oh, and Revelations 13, 16 to 17 talks about this. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. And we know that number being 666. You know, if you remember back in the 80s, we all thought Gorbachev had the mark when he had that birthmark on his forehead. But the mark of the beast, as we know, especially the way technology's going, is definitely look like it's going to be some sort of chip. You know, we were all brazen, we're not going to get that. Are we get that? Would we? Would we? If you want to buy goods, would you not take it? And how do we know it's the mark of the beast? Is it the right thing? We can see how it can turn into the mark of the beast. But something that could be that efficient, would it be good? Whew, that's a tough question. And now the second way that has come into play over the last 45 days and with this pandemic is healthcare. You are definitely seeing how somebody or someone, in the start probably an organization, could come into play and say, okay, it's healthcare. We're going to start, as the word is already coming out, contact tracing. Okay, we're going to put a chip inside you, and you're going to determine, or we're going to determine, if you have the antibodies that you can go outside, or you can go to restaurants, even to get in a restaurant. I know of a restaurant that was telling us the protocols that are in place now with just phase 1 of opening is that they have to take their name and address and temperature if they come in to eat. I mean, that's amazing what has to be done. And so you can start seeing easily how this system could be used in a fashion that an organization, like I said, that would start as an organization, but with an organization you have to have a leader, and how easy that could come into play. And I personally think it's going to be in the name of vaccines. Have you had the vaccine in order to go into society? Revelations 13, 5 through 7. And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. That's the 3.5 years of a 7-year tribulation that it's talked about in Revelations. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. Okay, he spent the first 3.5 years, and then the second, it's really going to get bad for Christians. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given over every, notice the word every, tribe, tongue, and nation. The Antichrist. So it's amazing how words 2,000 years ago can be so prevalent today. So if you were wondering how that could happen, boy, those are two ways that it could easily, I can start easily seeing how it can come into play. All right, now, let's talk about the differences. Economics determine what side of the argument that you are on with this stay-at-home and the amount of powers that have been taken, or the amount of freedoms that have been taken away due to this virus. Some right, some wrong. But unfortunately, the category has split. The economics determine if you believe that we should get out and see that the statistics and the death rate are not as high, and that this has been around probably since early December. More studies come out, and that more people have had it. The death rate is low. Every death is important. Nobody's going to argue on either side, but the people on the one side of getting out to get our economy back running are going to look at that number. Where is, if you have the people that are still getting a paycheck, they're going to be on completely a different side. Okay? And I break it down into two different ways. If you sign the front of the check, you're going to be on one side, and if you sign the back of the check, you're going to be on the other. If you have had your complete living taken away as a small business, or even as a big business, or even like Answers in Genesis, who have the Creation Museum and the Ark, if you have that business taken completely away, Where else are you going to think? How else are you going to think? There's a lot of damage being done to mental health, to suicide on that side. So of course you're going to think that way. Whereas if you sign the back of the check and you get unemployment that is greater than what you were when you have what you were working, or you still are getting a paycheck, a la teacher, government employee, city worker, etc. Now, essential workers like healthcare, I put into a different category. Those are champions that are diving into that every day. That's a different category. But even the essential people. But if you take a look at if you're signing the front of the check, it determines what side you're on. And the biggest frustration, just to give you an interesting stat on that. Before the pandemic, 53% of Americans received some sort of government paycheck. It had already gotten to be at dangerous levels. You cannot have a society work if you have the public sector higher than the private sector when it comes from revenue. Okay? And we were already getting to the point between welfare and unemployment and this subsidy and that subsidy. We were all getting to the point where it's getting dangerous, 53%. Now statistics show that after the pandemic, 89% of us could be on some sort of government paycheck. People, the system's not going to work. You cannot have a system that works that way. It just doesn't work. If you don't provide revenue from the private sector to create all this government stuff, you will fail as a society. You will be forced into socialism. You will be forced there. And finally, if you are getting a government paycheck, who are you voting for? Are you going to vote for the party that helps create that free money? Or are you going to vote for the party that takes it away? Interesting food for thought. I think everybody knows that answer. Here is the frustration that happens when I look and speak and watch the social media arguments. People do not understand how this system works. When you enter into an argument or a conversation with somebody, you assume they understand the facts on each side. And what is prevalent is they don't. People do not understand how this system works. I hear constantly, oh, nobody pays their fair share. Amazon doesn't pay their fair share. But no, these big corporations don't pay their fair share. The rich don't pay their fair share. What they don't understand is the brevity of all the taxes that are in our system, between the property taxes, the sales taxes, for businesses, the FICA taxes, the unemployment, the Medicare tax, the surtax, the Medicare surtax, the alternative minimum tax, the stadium tax. There's so many different taxes in our system. It is so complex, and there are so many different avenues that people have to pay tax. The right to do business tax in the state. It's just enormous. And what is striking to me is that so many people truly don't understand it, which tells me that we have done an incredibly bad job of teaching our children that system. We need to do better. We need to get our children taught to understand how this system works and how money is needed to create the money to build roads, to have good education systems. But that doesn't come without the private sector. You can't have the public sector continue to grow and the private sector stay down here. You can't do that. You will fail as a society. We need to teach children better. We need to educate them on how the system works. My personal opinion is we need to make it mandatory for somebody to go into business for 2 years. Now, if that's under the breath of a school, great. Or a college, great. But they need to understand the stress, the risk, okay, the complications that go in just to have a license to do business in this society. And what are you going to do when you can't make payroll? They need to understand that. For those that never understand that, it's impossible for them to make decisions without knowing. And they don't understand it. When it's not your money, you do not manage it well. It just doesn't work. We've seen it greatly in government, city governments, federal governments, state governments, golf courses. Okay, when it's not your money, you just manage it differently. It just when the stress is there, you look at things completely different. And unfortunately, the majority of people do not understand that, especially now when you're still getting a paycheck. You do not understand where this person is coming from, and therefore you have these arguments. And as I said, you cannot have government create revenue. They can do things short term by spurring infrastructure schemes and issues and stuff like that, but it cannot be long term. The only way to create a great society, and the reason why we have the greatest society on the planet, is that the people create the revenue. They create the economy. They create the tax base. And when you take that away, like we have with the regulations in place, there has to be certain consequences. And it is really, really, really tough for the person that has had everything taken away to understand somebody who doesn't. And you must understand that when you go into a conversation with that, with somebody on both sides. Now, with the amount of money that's been created to get us through this pandemic, inflation's coming. For those of you that remember the 70s, or if you had mortgages in the 70s, or if you had savings in the 70s, you remember the last time we had incredible inflation. You know that 3.5% mortgage? Oh yeah, it was about 15, 16%, 11%, 12%. Imagine trying to put that and covering that on a monthly basis. You cannot put money into a system without devaluing the dollar. You can't do it. And when you devalue the dollar, it takes more of it to buy resources, which creates inflation. It's coming. Be very wary. How quick? Who knows? And the other thing that is coming? Taxes. Taxes are coming. I pity the government leaders that have to come in after this situation. It is going to be, the piper has to be paid at some point. We as a government cannot continue to go up in debt. Can't do it. We lose our leverage in the world if we owe people money. We have to ultimately get that paid back. How are we going to do it? We're going to do it through taxes. Okay, they're coming. They're coming. Finally, I want to end with this. This is divisive. Nobody wants death. Nobody wants to catch it. And so when you look at arguments on both sides, there are valid points. And so when you enter into a conversation or a debate or even an argument with somebody in regards to this situation, think of this when you go into it. Seek their sanctification, not your vindication. Everybody wants to win an argument. I'm at fault for this. When I get into an argument, I'm going to win. I'm going to win the argument because I have my belief. Okay? Go into it with that attitude. Listen. Talk with kindness. Still be firm. Okay? But do it with kindness, but don't be loud. When you get into that argument, you have your opinion, you have a right to your opinion, and so does that other person. So make sure that you listen. So many people look at them and do the academic nod. Well, they didn't even listen to what they said. They just shook their head and then waiting for their turn to talk so they can pounce and win. So when you do argue, think of that. Seek their sanctification, not your vindication. All right, that's this week's talk. Thank you for watching. Next week's talk will be on the Apostle Paul. I have some great financial facts about Apostle Paul and in context of some things that were done through Paul. And then also next week, we are going to have a conference. We're going to have the Celebration of Hope next Friday and Saturday. We are going to do a web conference. The web conference will be free. We're looking for a lot of people to attend. We're bringing in Brian Scoggin from Casting Crowns to speak. We're bringing in Stephen Deese, who was on The Blaze. If you know his show, great show on The Blaze. We're bringing in some other speakers. Nazareth, the comedian, is coming on board. Carl and Juan will be speaking. But we look forward to seeing everybody. Next Friday, we'll be sending invites out. It will be on our web page and or Facebook page. But look for that. We look forward to that. Next Friday night, we'll have that web conference, and also Saturday. But as we head through next week, God bless, stay safe, and stay bold.